What's something unexplainable that you've experienced? Serious. I bought one pair of Bluetooth earbuds about 6 months ago. I received one pair about 4 months ago. I went to use them and they wouldn't auto connect on my phone. Weird. I paired them and there were 2 pairs now. Later I found my other pair sitting on my desk. I've been quarantining alone. No idea where the extra set came from. Less crazy than the other stories on this thread, but one time I was at the servo filling my car up at night time and there was a hospital across the road. A man with no shirt on wearing proper suit pants and formal leather shoes ran from the dark across the road into the servo. He was in there for 5 minutes then sprinted back into the dark. I walk in to pay for my petrol and the guy serving tells me that the random guy in the suit pants paid for my $50 tank of petrol. I had so many questions. I think I've shared this before, but here we go. As a kid, I had an imaginary friend who I would play with a lot. I had few real friends, but I was also more of an outcast in daycare and kindergarten, so sometimes that imaginary friend was all I had. My mother said I'd always describe him as very similar looking. When I was around preschool age, my mother said we needed to talk about my friend and I said that I'm fine with keeping Joshua around because I was scared of starting school alone. Her face just froze in shock and she never brought it up again. I didn't realize why until my grandma explained years later that I had a twin brother who didn't make it and my parents were planning on naming him Joshua. The only logical explanation I have is that I picked it up when I was very little, but my grandma said that my parents literally never talked about it because they didn't cope well with the loss at all. It's still very strange. Recently, I was on the couch watching something and I heard a crash from my washer and dryer room. My cat also shot up and looked in the direction of the door. It sounded like a broom fell over. Or maybe one of the plastic tubs. Freaked me out as I already don't really like that room in the first place. Plus it was very late at night and I live alone. Also because of the pull string door that leads to the creepy ass attic. Decided I was not going to be like every idiot in a horror movie and investigate what the noise was. I literally sat there on my couch for hours. The next day, I decided I had enough courage to take a peek and literally saw nothing touched. Both brooms were still propped up against the wall. All the plastic tubs were sitting perfectly. I have no idea what that noise was and I don't really care to find out. I climb up cell phone towers for a living. One time I was on top of a 350-foot tower, waiting for some test results. I got hit in the face with a small object. It hit me hard enough to bruise my eye. No idea what it was or where it came from. Part of a plane? Giant bug? No idea. When I was a kid, pre-teens, I would see a silhouette of a person standing on my doorway from time to time late at night. The figure never entered the room but just kinda stood there and didn't move. Normally I'd just hide under the covers because its presence terrified me. I know that it wasn't a dream because my brother, who is the same age, can verify that he often saw the same thing. Because my brother saw it too and oftentimes the same night. That disproved that it could have been my imagination or a hallucination or even a dream. Also, the figure was taller than anyone else who lived in the house and I also saw it at my grandparents' house. So it couldn't have been someone in my family either. I haven't seen it in years now. But I never really found an explanation for it. One time me, my brother and mom were in a McDonald's drive-thru getting McFlurries. And my brother pointed to the sky through the car windshield and there was a bike in the sky with a man just riding on it. It had balloons floating above it like an up. All 3 of us saw it. It wasn't imaginary. Although my brother forgot this happened, he was pretty young at the time. Me and my mom have not forgot. Years ago, I went to the movies with my mother. And we decided to see another movie afterwards. It was a simpler time. Lol. So my mom was calling my dad to tell him we would be home late. As she was on the phone with him, my phone rang. I looked at the screen and it said my mother's name. She definitely wasn't just f-king with me. Because she showed me her screen connected to my house phone. We had just seen a horror film and I was too afraid to pick it up. Kinda wish I did, though. But in retrospect, it was probably a number spoofing bot. Not sure those were as popular over a decade ago though, so I have no idea. I dream things that happen years in the future. Not even important events. Just random interactions at random points in the future with people I haven't met yet at seemingly random locations. It's also happened multiple times and isn't just a one-off occurrence, which could have maybe been passed off as coincidence. A few months ago I woke to see a tall dark figure standing over my bed, but because I suffer from sleep paralysis I just assumed I was hallucinating and went back to sleep. My mother-in-law was staying over that night in the spare room, and in the morning she started telling me how she woke to the feeling like she was being watched. Scared the shit out of me. I have way too many instances of knowing when someone is going to call me or calling them at the same time. So much so that even my husband has noticed it. I'm talking random phone calls from people I haven't spoken to in a while. Lost a necklace. Spent days tearing up my house. Correct. It was not valuable, but very sentimental. My deceased father gave it to me. I thought I had thrown it away accidentally. I had driven to work, to the store in the time I was looking. I had zero friend or family in my area. I was the only person with my car keys. I was single and living alone. Full stop. After days I gave up. Threw my hand up and said FCK it. The next morning I get in my car and there it was. Smack middle of my dash. It had not been there the night before. Nothing was missing and the car was locked. It's called selective blindness or something. It was there the whole time, but you were so sure it could not be there that your brain just ignored it. More or less the same reason why we can't see our nose until we actively try. Once I had a dream where I was picking up the paper from the porch, and a piece on page 1 said something like "the lions are in town," and thought when I woke up, what a stupid dream. The next morning I picked up the paper from the porch, and a piece on page 1 said something like "the lions are in town." The capitalization was indeed different, but that was pretty much the only difference. This is the only time anything like this has happened to me. I was on public transit one time and saw someone that was just about the same height as me and looked to have my body type. I just shrugged it off at the moment. As a taller girl with a slightly bigger frame, it's not that rare. The only seat is the one directly across from her. So I sit down and put my headphones in. I tend to people watch while I ride to school. So I started to do exactly that. I take a closer look at the girl in front of me. Same shade, cut and color hair. Huh. Weird. Her head is down, so I can't see her face. But when the bell dings to tell that it's the next stop, she looks up. Oh my lord. She has my face. She looks up at me and blinks twice. Same color eyes. I have very odd eyes. So brown they look black. Her eyes are so brown they look black. She stands up and walks off the bus. I turn to see her go. Sure, my eyes are playing tricks on me. She's gone. It's like she walked off the bus and just fell into a wormhole. I look at the spot we stopped. No girl there. Was creeped out for the entire week. About 9 years ago, I was searching our file cabinet for a document I needed. I had piles of papers all over the bed. Searched for an hour. Meticulously. Could not find it. Suddenly, the TV across the room, which is not on, makes a clicking noise. I stop what I'm doing. Look up and over at the TV. I see nothing out of the ordinary. So I turn back to the pile of papers. And the document I had been searching for is right on top. Like it was placed there. I looked up, said thank you, and put away the papers I didn't need. Every single relative that was close to me, that has passed away, has woken me up with some sort of presence. Near the foot of my bed. I'll also fall back asleep to lucid, vivid dreams of them. It always happens the night of passing. Because of it, I'd already know they passed away before I got the call in the morning. There seems to be a need for a strong bond for it to occur. My roommate found a strange key in their car. They did not drive anyone around. Car was locked. Windows rolled up. and a key that went to nothing that we owned was sitting perfectly in the middle of the passenger seat. I had a 1995 4Runner from about 2005-09. When I prepared to sell it, I cleaned it out and lifted the floor mat on the passenger side for the first time. I found the spare key on one of the last days I owned the car. And one time my brother bought a vehicle that had a credit card in a pocket on the visor. It was still in date. We didn't try to use it. It belonged to a business out of Texas and we live in NY. After a suicide attempt, I was left suffocating and barely conscious on the floor. It was late. And I was alone. I was slipping away. Felt like I was falling asleep or something. Suddenly this girl shakes me awake. She looked like she was in her early 20s. Told me off. Saying that I'm just like all the other dumbasses and that I need to get all the shit in gear. She said something about having so much more to give. Then she left. I honestly believe I was brought back by Azrael, the angel of death. Since that night I've straightened my shit out, gotten married, and am living happily. When I was in high school, I was driving home late from work. I was singing praise and worship songs, going up and down small hills. Suddenly I heard a voice say, "Move over." I didn't even have time to register it. I just moved my car as far to the side of the road as possible. Right after I did, over the top of the hill came a semi that was right where my car had been. I know not everyone believes in Jesus, but somehow I knew it was his voice. Okay, so one night I woke up late at night to see my dad standing in my doorway holding a knife. I slightly lifted my head and looked at him, and the second I woke he closed the door and walked away. I never brought it up, even thinking about it kinda freaks me out. Nothing ever came from this and I have no idea why he did this. My now ex-wife and I moved in with her dad after we relocated to a new state. He has this huge house that he had converted from a barn. I took a job working overnights shortly after we got there. On my days off, I'd stay up all night to keep my sleep schedule. One night we were playing Yahtzee at the kitchen table. We both heard someone walk from our bedroom, right above the kitchen, down the hallway to the top of the stairs. I got up and nearly ran to the stairs to see who was up there, because it should have been nobody. I went up the stairs and down the hall to our bedroom, checking the other rooms along the way. No one in the other rooms. No one in our bedroom. And I passed no one on my way up. I'm not saying it was ghosts or whatever, but 20 years later I still have no real explanation for those sounds. I was driving into my neighborhood and saw what looked like a rocket streak from one end of the horizon to the other. My first thought was a comet or meteor, but it lasted too long and had a consistent brightness the entire time. It appeared to come from the Air Force Base and was maybe 3 miles away. It's possible they were testing something, but the direction it was going was over land. The only other thing that seems reasonable is one of the F-22s with the afterburner going, but it would have been pretty loud and I didn't hear a thing even with my windows down. I used to live 5 miles from the base, and when they do engine maintenance or takeoff with afterburner you can feel the vibrations from that distance. One time I was at a super old, but also very high-end restaurant in my hometown. There have always been rumors the place was haunted, as the building is over 100 years old and it's been known to have a few ghost sightings. I went to use the restroom, but the whole time I was there, it felt like I was being watched. I went to wash my hands, looked in the mirror, nothing weird, looked at my hands, and saw blood everywhere, all over my hands, all over the sink. It was on my clothes. It was everywhere. I looked up in the mirror really fast and looked back at my hands. Totally normal. Clean hands. Nothing weird at all. I left the restroom shaken. I've never been to that restaurant since. I always remember this because it's kind of a butterfly effect. So we were going for a long drive and stop over to this town. We were about to get dinner but skipped it for some reason, and literally 20-30 minutes later a tornado touched down the area we were literally in, killing 3 people. TMI. One time when I was on my period, 14-15 years old, I went to a shared bathroom in the house to pee, and when I glanced in the toilet when I was done, there was a very small fetus in the toilet. I'd never had sex at that point, but it really weirded me out because my dad had a vasectomy years ago. My sister hadn't started her period, and we hadn't had any friends over recently. But obviously it couldn't have been me, right? I never told my parents about it. Since this was tagged serious, what it feels like to lose a 6-year-old to cancer. Even talking to other people who have had it happen, I don't think you can ever explain that feeling exactly. My parents, my brother, friends, have all died. 5 years later my kid's death still crushes me. The death of one's child is always hardest to bear. No parent should have to go through that. I'm sorry for your loss. I get premonitive dreams. It started with a very off-feeling dream that was just darkness and sadness a month before my mother passed from a freak asthma attack. But the dreams later got more and more detailed. My most unusual one was a dream of driving home to a house I'd never seen before and finding my dad working on a new white convertible, which I was surprised by. I found out we were moving months later. A year later we moved into that house from the dream. And a year after that he got a white convertible Mustang in the month since I had left for college without telling me. It hasn't been as specific since then. Mostly nowadays what I get is basically just slightly more detailed deja vu. But still. Also, they all have a very different feel from normal dreams. Weird. When I was in the 2nd grade, I started feeling really hungry and unwell one day during class. I toughed it out until lunchtime, but on the walk to the cafeteria, my sight changed so that I could only see in black and white. As soon as I started eating, I gained my normal vision back. The nurse sent me home later with a fever, but I have never been able to understand how that was even possible to temporarily go colorblind. My family doesn't believe me to this day. One time when I was a kid in elementary school, I woke up in the middle of the night and felt extremely paranoid. When I looked towards my door, I saw the figure of my mother standing there. Just a black silhouette in my doorway. I called out to her, "Mom," with no answer. She started walking towards me and I kept calling her over and over with no response. She came up to my bed and bent over, but her silhouette was still all black. I couldn't see clothing or her face. I then covered the blankets over my head and laid there for a few minutes, too scared to uncover myself. Eventually when I did, the silhouette was gone and I was alone again. I swear I was 100% awake and can still feel the fear I felt as I did back then. I have no idea why I saw that. I once dropped an eraser during class a few years ago. I looked around for it and couldn't find it, and shrugged it off. When I came back home that day, I saw an eraser on the kitchen island. It was the exact same eraser. Same pencil poke mark in it. Same rubbed off corner. Same everything. This isn't my first time experiencing something strange either. When I was little, I saw what I can only describe as a white blanket bobbing up and down the street. The blanket didn't bounce or flinch or anything. Just floated, I guess. I went to the other room trying to see if I could see it from there too. And it disappeared. I'm not sure if it was a dream or not, but I kind of think it was. I was hanging out with friends a couple years back when they decided to pull out a Ouija board. I thought it was bullshit and refused to touch it. My friends told me to ask it a question, and I said fine. I still wasn't touching it and told it to guess a 5-digit number I was thinking of. It wasn't like 12,345 or something. It was random. I didn't tell anybody the number. It guessed right. This wasn't the only creepy thing that happened that night, but the creepiest. When I was in 5th grade, I had a dream that I was sleeping. In the dream, I slowly wake up and see a skeleton on my bed, propped up against the wall. And in the dream I freaked out. Then it went to another dream after that. A little bit later, I woke up in real life, and there was a pillow on my bed, propped up against the wall, in the same position and in the same place as the skeleton. My eyes are getting watery now thinking back to it. Possibly the creepiest experience I will ever have. I will never forget this. I was young. Maybe 7 or 8. My family and I were watching Blade, vampire movie, and it really freaked me out. After the movie was over, I threw up an insane amount of blood. No one else did. So I can't even chalk it up to a strange case of food poisoning. I was completely fine afterwards. 20 years later and the incident still boggles my mind. I've had a car disappear on the highway right behind me. Straight stretch. So I could fully see he didn't pull off to the side or anything. He wasn't in my blind spot because I physically moved my head around to look and make sure. And he hadn't passed me or turned off anywhere because it's a highway. He was just gone in a second. 1 second I look in my rear view to see him coming up on me. Look back ahead for a second. Then back in the rear view and poof, he's just gone without a trace. It was freaky. My niece's toy, which was a battery operated talking stuffed animal, started talking one afternoon. The regular things he would say. Nothing different, when there were absolutely no batteries inside the toy. One time when I was playing a single player game on my PC, I suddenly started hearing noises in my headphones. I quickly ended the game and every opened window, but it didn't go away. It sounded like I was in a call with someone. I heard background noises and silent talking. It also sounded like someone fell asleep and then woke up after a while. It didn't come from outside, and as I tried to speak in the microphone of the headphones, no one answered. I checked multiple times if there was something opened and even restarted the computer, but when it was back up, the noises were back and even louder. This time I could definitely hear a male voice, but I didn't understand anything. I unplugged my PC out of panic and the next day I started it. It was gone and never came back. Have some creepy ass handprints on the outside of my bedroom window. Also, a few months ago I heard tapping on it nightly. Like someone was knocking at it or tapping with their fingertips or something, and when I asked it, to please quiet down, the tapping stopped. The real kicker? My bedroom's on the 2nd story. Back in college I was pretty deep in depression and was feeling extremely lonely. One day I was listening to music on an MP3 player. Specifically the song Pet by A Perfect Circle started. And I was thinking to myself, maybe it would be better if I was just alone. Then I suddenly felt this weird feeling like I was being watched, and the lyrics "Don't fret precious, I'm here" played, and then the MP3 just shut off. It had been fully charged and it had never done anything like that before. I know it was probably a weird coincidence, but it really freaked me out at the time. When I was younger I could completely understand foreign languages without ever really learning them. I couldn't speak it back, but I'd hold full conversations in Polish with my piano teacher and full conversations in Spanish with my neighbor. It faded by 12 though. 3 things. When I was 6 or 7 I was sleepless one night and I lay down on my back and just looked out the window. I literally blinked and it was suddenly daylight. Like time had magically skipped hours ahead. I know for sure I didn't sleep and nothing like that has happened ever again. Also, I have a 1-inch scar on my forehead right below my hairline and it is exactly in the center. Like I had surgery or something. I didn't. I was also born without tonsils.